Anyone could do your job, Leah. Don't start thinking you're special. The words hit like a slap across my face. My boss, Derek Vaughn, said it loud enough for everyone in the conference room to hear. My report, the one I stayed up 3 nights perfecting, sat in his hands. He tossed it aside like yesterday's trash. 12 pairs of eyes stared at the polished oak table, afraid to even blink. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to say something, anything, then stopped. He was smiling. That cruel, satisfied smile told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't feedback. This was a performance. This was him reminding everyone who had the power in this room. My name is Leah Rowan, and that humid Tuesday afternoon in July was the day I decided to stop being replaceable. The air conditioning hummed overhead as I forced myself to smile back at him, my hands gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. Nobody knew it yet, but Derek Vaughn had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The meeting ended with the scrape of chairs against hardwood floors. Nobody looked at me. Not Jessica from accounting, not Brian from sales, not even Mark, who usually had my back. Derek slapped another manager on the shoulder, his laughter booming across the room. That's how you handle subordinates. Keep them humble, keep them hungry. The words drifted down the hallway as I gathered my folder with trembling hands. I walked out before the tears could betray me, before anyone could see the cracks forming in my carefully constructed professional mask. In the hallway, away from Derek's eyes, Mark finally caught up with me. His voice dropped to a whisper. You didn't deserve that, Leah. Everyone knows it. I stopped walking and turned to face him. My voice came out steady, calmer than I felt. He just made the biggest mistake of his career. Mark's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but I was already walking away, my heels clicking against the marble floor with newfound purpose. 5 years earlier, I was the eager new hire with fresh ideas and boundless energy. The girl who stayed late fixing everyone's presentation slides. The one who saved Derek's proposals when his formatting went haywire before client meetings. He called me his right hand back then. I believed every word. During my first performance review, he leaned back in his leather chair and said, "When the next promotion comes up, you're first on my list. I promise you that." Those words kept me going through countless late nights and missed weekends. I watched him say the same thing to others, but I thought I was different. I thought my work spoke for itself. That was 2 promotions ago. 2 times I watched less qualified people who spent more time at happy hour than at their desks, climb the ladder while I stayed exactly where I started. But I kept working, kept believing that eventually hard work would be rewarded. I was so naive back then. 14 months into my job, I landed our first multi-million-dollar client, Westbrook Industries. I spent 6 weeks building that relationship from scratch, learning everything about their business model, their pain points, their goals. When the contract finally came through, Derek congratulated me in his office with the door closed. "Excellent work, Leah. This is exactly why we hired you." 2 days later, he took the stage at the company-wide celebration event. The entire staff gathered in the main conference hall, glasses of champagne in hand. "I'm proud of what I've built with this team," he announced, his chest puffed out like a proud peacock. "This Westbrook deal represents my vision coming to life." That single word, "I," cut through me like broken glass. I stood in the back of the room, forced smile plastered on my face for the cameras, while inside something fractured. Something that would never quite heal the same way again. Derek's favorites were always the same type. Loud guys who dominated every conversation. The ones who drank whiskey with him after work at McGinty's bar down the street. The ones who laughed too hard at his jokes, even when they weren't funny. I was the quiet one cleaning up their spreadsheet errors at midnight before client calls the next morning. I was the one triple-checking their data because I knew if something went wrong, I'd be blamed for not catching it. Once, during a meeting with a potential investor, Derek introduced me as his assistant. The word hung in the air like smoke. I wasn't his assistant. I was the lead strategist, the person who had researched every aspect of that investor's portfolio. But I smiled politely and shook hands, swallowing the humiliation like bitter medicine. That night, I went home and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wondering when I'd stopped recognizing myself. Everything changed during one late-night strategy meeting 6 months before that terrible Tuesday. The executive team gathered to discuss our expansion plans. I'd spent 2 weeks developing a comprehensive proposal, complete with market analysis and projected revenue streams. Derek arrived 5 minutes late carrying my printed presentation. I watched him flip through my slides, presenting my words as his own ideas. What I'm proposing here, he said, pointing to my graphs, is a complete restructuring of our client acquisition model. I sat frozen in my chair watching him steal my work in real time. After the executives filed out, praising his brilliant strategy, I waited until the room cleared. My heart pounded as I approached him. You used my entire deck. He looked up from his phone and smirked. I'm your boss, Leah. Your work is my work. That's how this works. I went home that night shaking, but not with fear. With rage. That night became a turning point I couldn't ignore anymore. I sat at my small kitchen table, my laptop open, the company logo glowing on the screen. 5 years of my life. Hundreds of unpaid overtime hours. Countless weekends sacrificed. I had made this place profitable with my ideas, my relationships, my dedication. The realization hit me like cold water. I whispered to the empty apartment, if I disappeared tomorrow they'd fall apart within a month. My cat Oliver jumped onto the table and rubbed against my arm. I scratched behind his ears, my mind racing with possibilities. That was when it finally clicked into place. That was exactly what I needed to prove to them, to Derek, to everyone who'd overlooked me for years. I needed to show them what happened when the person they considered replaceable simply walked away. A smile spread across my face, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. The wheels were already turning. 3 weeks after that humiliating conference room incident, the company announced a massive opportunity. Tarlon Systems, a tech giant looking to overhaul their entire customer management platform. The potential deal was worth $13 million. $13 million. It would be the biggest contract in our company's 15-year history. Derek called an emergency meeting, his eyes gleaming with ambition. This will make or break us, he announced dramatically. This is our chance to play with the big leagues. He assigned me the initial research, the background work nobody else wanted to do. But 2 days later, during the team briefing, he made sure everyone heard his thoughts. Leah, don't get too attached to this one. This is grown-up business and we need our A-team handling the client relationships. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation rising up my neck. But this time I smiled calmly. I understand completely, Derek. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead of him. While Derek strutted around the office boasting to executives about his upcoming career-defining deal, I quietly did what I always did. The real work. Late-night phone calls with Patricia Holloway, Tarlon's vice president of operations. Handwritten notes about their internal frustrations that nobody else bothered to ask about. I learned that Patricia's team felt ignored by previous vendors. I learned that their CEO, Marcus Tarlon, valued loyalty and personal connection above flashy presentations. I discovered that their main pain point wasn't technology, it was trust. They'd been burned by 3 consulting firms in 2 years. I organized every single piece of insight, every conversation, every detail that would make this deal possible. But I did something different this time. I kept everything under password-protected files on my personal cloud drive. Not the company server. My files. My research. My relationships. Every night I'd back up my notes, making sure nothing lived on company computers. Derek never asked where I kept my work. He never cared about the details. That would be his downfall. 2 weeks before the scheduled pitch presentation, Derek made his move. He called me into his corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Leah, I've been thinking about the Tarlon pitch. He didn't even look up from his computer screen. I'm replacing you on the core team. Todd will be taking over your responsibilities. Todd. The guy who couldn't read a basic profit and loss statement without help. The guy who'd been with the company for 8 months and spent most of his time talking about his golf game. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. May I ask why? Derek finally looked at me, his expression cold. You're too emotionally invested in this. We need people who can handle pressure without getting attached. He paused, then delivered the final insult. We need men who can handle the big leagues. The sexism was so blatant, so casual, it took my breath away. I stood up slowly. I see. I'll transfer my files to Todd. I lied smoothly. There were no files to transfer. Not anymore. The breaking point came the day before the big presentation. Derek called me into his office again. I'd barely slept, running through scenarios in my mind, planning my next move carefully. He sat behind his massive desk, tapping my research report with one finger. The report I'd somehow been forced to submit through the company system. "Leah," he said, his voice dripping with false kindness, "I want you to know something. You're valuable to this company. You really are." He paused for effect. "But you're not irreplaceable. Nobody is. I need you to keep that in mind going forward." His grin was pure arrogance, the smile of someone who believed he held all the cards. The smile of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. I forced myself to smile back, matching his energy perfectly. "Noted, Derek." Message received loud and clear. Inside, every fiber of my being was already done. Already gone. Already planning my exit with surgical precision. He had no idea what was coming. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of red wine and opened my laptop one final time as an employee of Crestpoint Consulting. I drafted my resignation letter carefully, professionally, giving no hint of anger or emotion. "Dear Derek, please accept this letter as my formal 2 weeks notice. My last day will be August 15th. Thank you for the opportunities over the past 5 years. Short, plain, devastating." I saved it as final_resignation.docs, but I didn't send it yet. The timing had to be perfect. I needed to wait until after the presentation date. I wanted Derek to walk into that meeting room with Tarlon Systems feeling confident, feeling like he'd won, feeling like he didn't need me at all. Only then would the truth hit him with full force. I took another sip of wine and allowed myself a small smile. Patience was a weapon most people underestimated. I'd learned that lesson well over 5 years of being overlooked. Now it was time to teach Derek the same lesson. I cleaned out my desk slowly over the next few days, taking only personal items. My favorite coffee mug with the chipped handle. The small succulent plant Mark gave me last Christmas. Photos of Oliver. Colleagues kept stopping by whispering questions. "You're really leaving?" Jessica asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. I nodded calmly. "Yeah. Just time to move on, you know?" Mark caught me by the elevator on my second to last day. "This is about Derek, isn't it?" I didn't answer directly. "It's about knowing your worth." That afternoon, Derek walked past my half-empty desk and actually smirked. He couldn't help himself. "Good luck out there, Leah. You'll see pretty quickly how replaceable everyone is in this industry. Maybe you'll appreciate what you had here." I looked up at him and smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "I already know exactly how replaceable I am, Derek. That's not what I'm worried about." His smirk faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly and walked away. He had no idea what I meant. Not yet. What Derek failed to understand in his arrogance was simple. The Tarlon deal wasn't built on PowerPoint slides or fancy presentations. It was built on trust. On relationships. On months of conversations where I actually listened to Patricia's concerns instead of just pitching services. I'd learned that Marcus Tarlon's daughter had just graduated from the same college as me. I discovered that their IT director Kevin Brooks, loved the same obscure science fiction novels I did. These weren't details you found in company databases. These were human connections built slowly over dozens of calls and emails. Without those insights, Derek's presentation would be hollow. Just another vendor making promises. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't delete files or poison any wells. I simply took my knowledge with me when I left. The relationships I'd built, the trust I'd earned, the understanding I'd developed, all of that was mine. It always had been. Derek just never realized that people and relationships can't be copied and pasted into a presentation deck. The presentation was scheduled for Friday morning at 9. I spent that day at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment, trying to read a book but mostly just checking my phone. At 10:30 Mark's text came through. "They're dying in there. Client looks confused and annoyed." My heart started racing. 15 minutes later, another message. "They just walked out. Patricia said this wasn't what she expected." By noon, the rumors had spread through the company's internal chat system that several people had added me to despite my resignation. The deal had completely fallen apart. By 3 in the afternoon, Derek's calendar had been mysteriously cleared for emergency executive meetings. I sat in that coffee shop, my untouched latte growing cold, and smiled. Not with cruelty but with vindication. 5 years of being told I was replaceable, and it took less than 4 hours for them to realize the truth. I shut off my phone, paid my bill, and walked home through the sunny streets feeling lighter than I had in years. The office exploded with gossip over the weekend. My former coworkers couldn't help themselves, texting me updates despite my resignation. Everyone's freaking out. They lost the Tarlon deal. Derek was in the CEO's office for 3 hours yesterday. Apparently they had no idea what Tarlon actually needed. On Monday morning, a brave intern named Kyle posted something on LinkedIn that made me laugh out loud. Always value the people who actually do the work, not just the people who take credit for it. The post got 2,000 likes in 4 hours. Derek had posted a congratulatory message about the Tarlon deal 3 weeks earlier, prematurely celebrating a done deal. He deleted it within hours of the presentation disaster, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots circulated. People started asking questions. The professional world is smaller than most people realize, and failure at this level doesn't stay quiet for long. The dominoes were falling faster than I'd even anticipated. Monday morning at 8, my phone rang with Derek's number. I let it ring 4 times before answering, making him wait. Leah. His voice was tight, controlled, barely containing panic. We need to talk about the Tarlon research files. I sipped my coffee slowly before responding. What about them? We need access to your client notes, the background research, the conversation summaries. Everything you compiled. I paused, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Those files were on my personal cloud drive, Derek. For organization purposes. I assumed all company property was properly backed up on the company servers like it's supposed to be. More silence. Then his voice turned sharp. You knew this would happen. You knew we'd need those files. I felt a surge of satisfaction but kept my voice calm and professional. What I knew, Derek, is that you thought you didn't need me. I guess we both learned something. I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking slightly. Not with fear. With power. By Wednesday, the situation had spiraled into full crisis mode. The CEO, Vincent Carmichael, called an emergency all-staff meeting. I heard about it from 3 different people who still had me on various group chats. The $13 million Tarlon deal was officially dead. The investors were furious. 2 board members had called emergency sessions. Vincent wanted answers, wanted to know how a guaranteed deal had collapsed so spectacularly. Derek blamed Todd first, claiming he wasn't properly briefed. Todd, sensing his job was on the line, blamed insufficient information due to staff turnover. That phrase, staff turnover, was code for me. HR quietly began circulating job postings for senior strategist positions. The company's stock price, which had risen on news of the Tarlon deal, dropped 4% in one day. The financial blogs picked up the story. Crestpoint Consulting loses major tech contract, appeared in 3 industry newsletters. I read each article carefully, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Sadness for the company I'd once believed in. Satisfaction that the truth was finally visible. Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Leah Rowan? A woman's voice, professional but warm. This is Patricia Holloway from Tarlon Systems. Do you have a moment? My breath caught in my throat. Of course, Patricia. How are you? She laughed, but it wasn't a comfortable sound. Honestly, frustrated. That presentation on Friday was nothing like our conversations. It felt like they didn't know us at all. I chose my words carefully. I'm sorry you had that experience. Don't be sorry. I'm calling because our team realized something. You were the only person at Crestpoint who actually understood what we needed. The only one who listened. My heart started pounding. I appreciate that. Patricia's voice softened. Our partner firm, Axion Partners, is looking for someone with your exact skill set. Someone who builds real relationships instead of just pitching services. Would you be interested in talking to them? I sat down hard on my couch, Oliver jumping up beside me. Yes, I managed to say. I would absolutely love to talk to them. Within 2 weeks I had a new job. Axion Partners offered me a senior strategist position with a 40% salary increase and an actual respect for work-life balance. My new boss, Helena Crawford, shook my hand firmly during our first meeting. We heard what happened at Crestpoint. Word travels fast in this industry. She smiled. We value people like you, Leah. People who do the real work. That word, value, hit me harder than I expected. It was everything I'd wanted to hear for 5 years. My first assignment was announced in my second week. Managing Tarlon Systems' new digital expansion project. The same deal Crestpoint had lost. The same $13 million that had slipped through Derek's arrogant fingers. Patricia personally requested me for the project. "This is who we wanted from the beginning," she told Helena. I sat in my new office, sunlight streaming through windows that actually opened, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the desperate, approval-seeking pride of my Crestpoint days. Real pride. The kind that comes from knowing your worth. The industry is smaller than people think, especially in consulting. Within a month, the story had spread to every major firm in the region. Did you hear about Crestpoint's disaster? Their top strategist left and took a $13 million deal with her. Apparently the boss had been taking credit for her work for years. Karma caught up. I never said a word publicly. I didn't post about it on LinkedIn, didn't gossip at industry events, didn't badmouth Derek even when people asked directly. The silence was more powerful than any statement I could have made. People filled in the blanks themselves, and the truth was damning enough without my help. At a networking mixer, I overheard 2 executives talking by the bar. Crestpoint really screwed up letting Rowan go. They didn't just let her go. They humiliated her first. Made her think she was replaceable. Guess they found out different. I smiled into my glass of wine and moved on to another conversation. The story was writing itself. I didn't need to add anything to it. 2 months after I left, Mark sent me a text that made my day. Big news. Derek got reassigned. He's a strategic advisor now. Strategic advisor was corporate speak for demotion. A way to save face while stripping someone of actual power. They'd moved him to a smaller office, one without windows, Mark said. No more corner office overlooking the city. No more direct reports. Just busy work and the slow realization that his career had peaked and started its decline. Todd was laid off entirely, a casualty of the disaster he'd been thrown into without proper preparation. I felt a twinge of sympathy for him. He'd been set up to fail by Derek's ego. The company's morale was in free fall according to Jessica, who still texted me occasionally. 3 more senior people had quit in the past month. Everyone could see that Crestpoint's culture was rotten, and the Tarlon disaster had exposed it for everyone to see. Mark's final text that day said everything. "You were the glue, Leah. Everyone knows it now. They're just too proud to admit it out loud." 4 months after everything fell apart, I attended the Regional Consulting Summit, the industry's biggest annual conference. Axion Partners had a large booth in the premium section, right near the main stage. We were showcasing the Tarlon project, which had already exceeded initial projections. I was scheduled to speak on a panel about client relationship management. Crestpoint had a booth too, but it was smaller, tucked in a back corner near the bathrooms. Desperate was the word that came to mind when I walked past it. Their banner looked cheap, their handouts were basic, and the 2 representatives standing there looked miserable. That's when I saw him. Derek, standing near the coffee station, looking older somehow. His suit was the same expensive brand he'd always worn, but it hung differently on him now. He spotted me across the crowded hall and his entire body went rigid. Our eyes met for a brief moment. I smiled politely the way you smile at a stranger and kept walking. Journalists and other consultants surrounded me within seconds, asking about Axion's success. I didn't look back. The tables had turned completely. A week after the conference, my phone lit up with notifications. A major trade magazine, Consulting Excellence Monthly, had published their fall issue. The cover story made my hands shake. The strategist who redefined client relations, Leah Rowan. The article detailed my approach to building genuine client relationships, featuring quotes from Patricia and Marcus Tarlon themselves. It mentioned how my former employer had underestimated her contributions, leading to a significant business loss. Derek's name wasn't mentioned once. Not once. He'd been erased from the narrative entirely, which was somehow more brutal than being called out directly. The article ended with a quote from me. "Success isn't about taking credit. It's about doing work that speaks for itself even when you're no longer in the room." My phone exploded with messages. Congratulations from old colleagues, connection requests from industry leaders, and even a few interview requests from podcasts. I hadn't needed to write my revenge. The truth had written itself, and the industry had delivered the final verdict. Derek Vaughan was forgettable. His greatest achievement was losing me. 6 months after I walked out of Crestpoint Consulting, I received a LinkedIn message from an old coworker I barely remembered. Thought you'd want to know. Company's restructuring again. Derek's gone. They let him go last Friday. I stared at the message for a long moment, sitting in my new corner office at Axion. The city stretched out before me, afternoon sunlight turning the buildings gold. I thought about typing a response but decided against it. Instead, I closed my laptop and looked out at the skyline, my reflection staring back at me from the glass. Stronger. Plumber. Finally valued for what I'd always been worth. I whispered to that reflection, "Too replaceable, huh?" A smile crossed my face, but I didn't gloat, didn't post anything on social media, didn't celebrate publicly. There was no need. The best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public callouts. It's walking away so completely, so successfully, that your former company collapses under the weight of your absence. It's building something better while they scramble to fix what they broke. It's knowing that they'll remember your name long after you've stopped thinking about theirs. I turned back to my computer, opened a new project file and got back to work. There were clients who actually valued me waiting. And that was the only revenge I'd ever needed.